First of all, I would like to thank everybody who decided to attend this presentation, and I hope that it will be insightful and interesting, and you will enjoy it. As the moderator who thought that I am from another country, I would like to point out that I'm not. As an introduction, I have been in this line of work for more than half a decade, and I'm from Ohrid, by the way, which is a native town. You can call it like a different country because of our interaction with people, but that's a different story for a different presentation. First of all, over here we're going to discuss about transforming user experiences with the use of AI and sorry, this is a little bit uncomfortable to have. Transforming the user experiences by leveraging the technologies that are available and emerging at the moment. And when I was thinking about how to start this presentation, I decided that I want to start it with a sentence for which I'm pretty sure that almost every single one of you is familiar with, is that if you want to know the future, you need to take a look at the past. And why I decided to start with this quote is basically for two reasons. One is personal. The interesting trivia is that the guy from Ohrid, almost 6 years ago, in the same building, but on a different stage, held a presentation about the future of UX. Now, granted, the buzzword at the time was smart. It was not AI, but still a small part of the predictions that I did then, I'm happy to announce that now we're going to talk about them. The second part is that, as we are aware, those technologies predominantly work on the way of analyzing the past experiences that users have with some systems to be able to do a prediction of or anticipation of how that will happen in the future. But before we go to that part, it's obligatory to have some groundwork done. So, in this line of business, we are all aware that it always starts with a couple of questions. And these are the basic ones. We need to understand what we are building, why are we building it, because in the essence, every product that is available right now tends to solve a problem that the user has. That may be like an everyday task that they need to do, or in general, it might be like an ease of use thing. And the third question is, who are we building it for? That's the deep understanding and the primary focus basically on this presentation. The importance for reaching concrete answers for these questions is that they unlocked the important one of what approaches are we going to take or how are we actually going to build it. Now, granted, this question is dependent on the answers of this and can have different emotional responses in terms of we might be happy to say and ask like how are we going to build it, or a completely opposite reaction would be like, how the hell are we going to build it? So it kind of depends on the answers of these questions. But as I mentioned, the main focus, as is predominantly with UX, is to pay attention on who are we building it for and to have a deeper understanding of that. But it also connects to all of the challenges that we face when starting to work on something. Now, I'm not going to read all of them because if we have a presentation where each and every single one of us will say the challenges that we have while working on a project, that will be like a 48-hour presentation probably. So, just as an idea, they can range from unclear goals and objectives to complex decision makings, buy-ins, cultural differences, etc. And not to forget about time to market pressure. But for the sake of this presentation and the point that I'm trying to do, we will limit our focus on only this two. The limited stakeholder alignment, which happens more than we would like to announce, and the result of that, which is the inadequate or, let's say, non-existent user research that has been done to support the claim for the validity of this product, for example, that we are going to build. Now, for those who have worked with me, know that whenever I'm trying to explain something to the client, I'm usually trying to use real-life examples of real scenarios that happen. So in this case, I have a short one, which might look weird, but it will come into play later again, I promise. And that goes in line with the way that clients perceive and usually tend to talk from the position of the users. They tend to make a claim that I know what's best for my users, I can explain that better and better. But that's kind of missing the point. And here is that real-life example. I have a 6-year-old daughter at home, and I decided to surprise her with some shoes. And I went to the store, I picked these ones on my, let's say, personal preferences that I liked the color and the shape of it, and I thought that it was cool. But the reaction that I got at home was completely different, because by my not understanding the problematic, I missed out that almost 8 out of 10 children right now will go for this one. There is a nod from the audience. Basically, the thing is that these are all flashy and have all these colors. They have unicorns. When you stomp them hard on the ground or when you start running, there are flashing lights going out. So I got the main point right, that the shoes are a necessity, but I completely missed out on the point of which one I should choose. And now, the analogy over here, apart from if you have girls at home, always go with unicorns, you cannot miss, is that for me to mitigate or undo the wrong that I did is a fairly easy thing. I need to drive, and it's actually a very short drive to the store where I got them, and just replace them with this one. But imagine these assumptions leading to a decision like this on a project that costs way more than the shoes that I just replaced, and the effects that will have in general. It will not be an easy mistake to fix. So that's, in essence, what happens when we don't have nice user research. Basically, the clients will rob us of one of the basics that we need to do, and that's the user segmentation. And why is this so important? And these are just 3 small examples in a field that has a bunch of them, is that we need to create groups of our users, ranging from, let's say, demographical profiles, like what age, location, what's the type of occupation that they have, the level of income or education. Then, in this example, the technographic profile that will tell us what are the proficiencies that they have in technology, what type of devices do they prefer to use, what are the favorite platforms that they tend to use. And again, the psychographic ones, like the interest, values, attitude, etc., that our potential users possess. And that's an important part, because actually it drives all of the decisions that we're going to do for the project. But key word in this sentence is the diverse expectations and behaviors of our audiences. Because no matter how many or how much we analyze our users, they still tend to fall into some of the groups. That's the limitations that we have from a UX perspective when analyzing something. And then we will find some overlapping things from those groups. And those are, to admit, the things that we will focus more. If we see that the majority would appreciate if we have functionality A, B, and C in the product at launch, that's the thing that it's going to drive our main attention and focus, and that's where all the resources will go, because everything else will fall to a lower priority. And the problem that it's now emerging is that, as you can notice, this is a reactive rule-based system, and it has no way of adapting to any change that's happening in real time from a user perspective, based on their behaviors, preferences, desires, etc. And the thing is that currently, and these are studies, actually, you can Google almost anything that I'm gonna share here, done by McKinsey, Bain, and all the companies in that line of work, that say that more than 80% of potential customers expect to have a certain level of personalization, and it will gladly engage more with that product if it's offering that level of personalization. So it's not something that we can walk around anymore. It's something that we need to adapt to. So, and this is the point of the presentation, is that we can leverage existing technologies to improve on that part. And now, this is a very big field to have a discussion for, but let's just focus our attention on these 3 things. Like the 3, let's say, ways that we can personalize an experience in our product from an AI perspective, by leveraging the AI product. So, behavioral, contextual, predictive. Those are the three mains that we're going to discuss right now. The names are pretty self-explanatory, but just as a sentence. The first one, the behavioral one, will analyze the user's past interactions that they have and tailor the content and recommendations based on that. The contextual one is following some different things, like where is the user using it, for example, the location, what type of device it is, the time of the day. It's a completely different set of values that we are following. For predictive personalization, and that's the most interesting one, is that based on the data, historical data, it can anticipate what the user needs will be even before the user interacts with that system. So the most interesting thing is that all of these things can be explained if we use examples from e-commerce or marketing, because those domains have always been the front for interactions with the users. But for this presentation, I decided to go into 3 domains for which, again, there are a lot of case studies happening lately, and you can, let's say, Google and verify all of this that I'm going to say. And there are certain levels to what happened when they started implementing something like this. The most interesting one of all of them is honestly logistics. We will get to all of them, but we will spend more time on logistics. Why? Because at an essence, logistics business model can be explained very easy. It's a very complex domain, but we can summarize it in a couple of words. And that's that, for example, I have a couple of goods that need to be shipped somewhere. I get in touch with some of the company that works with logistics, and then I will be able to ship the product wherever it needs to go. I will present it with options for that based on price, cost. Maybe I'm aware of the environment, so that will play around that too. But the thing is that the complexity of this business model relies on a lot of data. So let's say that logistics need to have data for everything. And they're required by law, by the way, to keep that data almost indefinitely, because it's a type of domain that smuggling will be one thing to point out. So they need to know what's the type of cargo that I'm shipping, what type of customer I am, what's my needs from that part. Do I have customs documents or approvals? Am I in compliance with international laws, etc.? And that is a lot of data that these guys keep, and we're not able, let's say, to action on it to the extent that they can right now. So when you look at this as just simply data, it happened that they saw great opportunity. And not just opportunity to improve the current business model, but to go in an unexpected direction and create a separate business model that coexists with this one. And that's when the shoes that I was showing you previously come into play. If, for example, now you want to start a business of producing that unicorn shoe that we were looking at, you will be faced with a lot of challenges at the beginning. You need to find manufacturers, you need to find sources for the materials, you need to have suppliers for that, warehousing, storage, etc. Shipping is also one of the complexities as well. So by analyzing this data through machine learning and AI, these guys started to see some patterns appearing. So basically, for this type of users, which are new, or for the existing one, they started to do this. Like offer an end-to-end supply chain service that's basically tailoring to every single need that a customer has. For example, you are creating that shoe. These guys can provide you with a list of the best companies with the best track records to supply you with the laces, for example, or the rubber, or the plastics, or whatever you need to create that shoe. And that plays very well for both the user and the companies that are in this line of work, because it can tailor to every single user specific needs. Basically, like you having a co-pilot with your business, saving you money, providing you with all the insights that you need to make decisions that will benefit you on the great run. And that's the problem with the previous model that we were discussing before going into details for this one. It lacked the granularity, because when we divide the users by groups, there are always the trade-offs that I mentioned that we were doing. Right now, there are no trade-offs. It's for me specific. If, for example, the one who nodded for the shoes is in a different line of business, maybe food or something, that will change. But it will still be data that's verified and actionable on. And in essence, it provides a truly personalized experience for every single customer that these guys have. Sorry. So that's an example for a domain that had an unexpected improvement and addition to the business model that they had previously. For the next two, because they're a little different, the thing is that if you look at healthcare as a domain, that it's now emerging in the usage of those trends as well, it's more connected about sourcing different types of data and analyzing that. For example, from data from patients, data from big pharma companies, data from healthcare professionals, and then again those patterns appear. Like in what place, by what condition is this drug more used, by what, let's say, the patient data also comes into play, because it will answer the question of what was the perception of that drug by the patients, etc. So it allows all the three, as in this example, of all the three in this example that I mentioned, like the customers of that part, to have a better way of understanding what's going on. Like pharma companies can make decisions in terms of, well, maybe we should discontinue this drug, or maybe we can improve it slightly based on that patient data that we have, and so on and so forth. The most interesting one is also in the sports domain. But let's just stick to football. And this is interesting because if you Google, you will even find a documentary of this for two clubs in Portugal. And they are Benfica and Sporting. The interesting part is that they have always been recognized as the ones that produce the best, almost the best talents in the world. Like people like Ronaldo or Figo or Rui Costa. I don't know if we have a lot of football fans over here, but Google the names, at least Ronaldo everybody knows. And the thing is that they started employing AI in the academies that they have, because that way they are able to track each individual progression on a more granular level than previous. In terms of what? They started tracking eating habits, sleeping habits, intake of medication, performance on training, even the positioning of the player in certain strategic plays, either on training or at a match, to a level of precision that was not existent previously. Because for those that are not aware, football academies tend to work as boarding schools. Basically, young kids move there and live there. And that's the whole point of it. By employing AI technologies to the business model, let's call it like that, because football is also a great business, they were able to improve and dedicate to a level of personalization that was not available before, a model that can identify which are the aspects they need to change for every single one of them, of one of the academy prospects, to get them to a level of peak condition. Now, we talked about logistics, healthcare, and football, and the difference is more than obvious of what happened. One found a way to elevate the business to new heights and offer a completely different solution to customers. The next one, the healthcare one, found a way of how to connect all the dots to gain actionable data that they can use. And the third one found a way of how to improve performances in sport. And it's interesting to see how that's affecting different sectors. Like one bonus one in this place that we don't have, that I don't have on the slide, would be, for example, insurance. Insurance companies now tend to connect with different data sources that track weather conditions, geological conditions, etc. For example, if I am insuring a building of mine, and there is a statistical data that shows that in the last 10 years, there is some tectonic movements and stuff like that, there is a cross-sell opportunity for that insurance company to offer me with backed data. It's not like just a form, well, will you like this and this? And you can easily say no. But now you have the ability to make the decision because you have actionable data there. They will tell you, like, we have information that, let's say, from the city building plans, that in 3 blocks radius from your building, we can have, there is a probability that there will be a storage space open for somebody that works in pyrotechnics. So it will be a nice idea for you to add that extra cover of insurance for explosions, for fires, for stuff like that. So that's like the, let's say, a couple of examples of how these technologies are leveraged. And now it's becoming a norm to have them because almost everybody of the big players are offering them. Like Amazon has the personalized thing, IBM has the Watson X, HubSpot is even offering like predictive lead scoring. Adobe surprisingly have a system where we will submit, let's say, our user research and the user flows that we have, the empathy maps, and they will track in real time whether users are following that or if need to change something. So it's something that, for example, the previous contextual thing that we were discussing about UX, which was, let's say, considered as a high ground, like the segmentation of users, now it's slowly, but rapidly, if that makes sense, is transitioning from being the high ground to being the ground level of that research so that we can start to implement techniques and use this new technology that is available to elevate it to a different place. But there are some challenges and considerations. Like, for example, data privacy was, is, and always will be like the main thing, especially for this level of personalizations, because we are handling a lot of personal data and we need to make sure that we are in line with all the regulations and compliance with things like, for example, the GDPR. Another thing, I won't go into details for that part, is the algorithmic bias. We are all pretty much aware, especially with NLPs, like what happened with Gemini, what can happen with ChatGPT when it starts hallucinating and stuff like that. So we need to make sure that we kind of eliminate that from the equation to some extent. And the third one that we need to be very mindful of is something that is now emerging. Like with this personalization that we were discussing, there is a trend right now that it's called hyper-personalization. And that's where the problems occur because users experience the sense that they are not in control. And that's something that we always try to avoid in UX. Whatever users do, they need to feel like they're in control. But right now, with all the predictions and everything else, like I mentioned, the users can often feel like, well, I didn't have any say into this. Like the system knew what I wanted to do even before I did it. So I kind of feel that my decision in that point was guided by something and I didn't have a lot of say in it. So in essence, that's one thing that we really, really need to be mindful and aware of. And with that, honestly, I hope that I didn't create any fatigue for you guys, that you enjoyed the point that I was trying to make, and I really appreciate you coming over here to listen to this presentation, and I hope that at least it will act like a spark for some thoughts on this. Feel free to Google everything that I mentioned, reach out personally if you want. Like, there are a lot of case studies, especially for the logistics domain, because that's the most drastic change that has ever occurred. And if anybody wants to continue this conversation casually, I will be at the Symphony's Corner with some coffee. So I wasn't aware if we have any Q&A in the presentations, but now the floor is open. If anybody has any questions, I would gladly answer them.
First, an applause for the presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Well, just a few questions if the crowd has any. Yes?
Would you say user fatigue comes more from the user interacting with the AI directly or being led through a specific process, let's say a checkout process or something?
The second one.
The second one.
Anything that takes away the feeling of control, as mentioned. Like, let's use an example that in the past, by analyzing the past data, we saw that around Christmas, you usually tend to, as I mentioned, like this is the best way and easiest way to explain it is through e-commerce. That you have the tendency to buy certain things, and all of a sudden you are bombarded with them wherever you go, like social media, you open up Amazon, that happens, and it's like, after a while, users tend to react to that, well, you know what, I'm not gonna buy them just out of spite, because they obviously know me that better to predict what I'm gonna do. So that would be my answer. Just to one thing, because as I mentioned 6 years ago, I was talking more philosophically on the future. If you ask me, maybe this question what I'm about to say will be in tone with the question as well, is that my prediction right now will be that the focus of the next focus of this thing will be around emotional responses from users. How that will happen, I'm not entirely sure, honestly, but I'm guessing that that's one of the fields that it's still untapped enough, but it's something that can add great value in the decision-making of what to use from a technology standpoint.
Thank you.
Personally, I really love this topic. It's really interesting. Thank you for your question. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, let's go here.
You mentioned personalization of products, especially for e-commerce and something like that. But as we go down this personalization route, how do you handle, or how should we handle, exposure to new products that aren't really, caught up by the web of AI and what your past predictions, what your behavior is? You kind of go down the road of too narrow set of products that appeal to you, that should appeal to you, that the data says that would appeal to you. But how do you ensure that you are still exposed to other new products which are not connected to your past purchases or current interests?
Well, an easy way to explain this is probably by psychology, because most of UX is based on that. But keep in mind that people are creature of habits. So if you are used to using something, you will continue using it. There needs to be something way more drastical for you to make the switch. And the thing, like right now, how to avoid certain things is like that thing that appears on Instagram when you scroll like up until 3 videos. It's like escaping the matrix. It's how are you gonna do that at the end? Because every single product will come, let's say, next in line, will try to utilize these technologies. No one right now will dare to create something that is not utilizing this. Because let's be honest, that happened a couple of times. Like first was cloud, then was smart, now it's AI. Even for startups, the trend is that if they don't at least include AI in the name, there is a problem applying for funding, right? So let's just be honest on that part. It's that the way the current landscape.
Thank you. I remember we have another question here. Yes? Okay.
Hi, just wanted to ask whether you think it's okay to allow the users to choose whether they want the personalization or no.
Well, that's the thing. The whole point of this presentation was for situations where users don't have the option to choose whether they want personalization or not. Because companies, especially like I mentioned in the logistics domain, they give that right now as a finished product. So you don't get to say in it whether you want to have that part or not. It's just the way it comes along naturally. The one thing that it's still allowed to the users is not to follow that suggestions. You still have the decision to do that. But completely avoiding it, it's not really possible. Because that's the way those things are handled. It's not, if someone, let's say a current application that is not utilizing these technologies want to utilize them in the future, they will not make it like an optional. It will be marketed like the next evolution of the product or the next big thing where we save you a bunch of time without you typing what you need. We know, trust us, and stuff like that. It always revolves around that.
Okay. Do we have a final question to wrap up the session? We have time for one more. No? Okay. Well, in the lobby, if you meet Tomi, remember to turn off your phone, get rid of the battery, and put your phone in a foil, aluminum preferably. So thank you, Tomi, for your presentation.
Thank
Another
you for
round of
having
applause,
me.
please.